Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Couple of Nerds. I'm your host, DnDWife, and with me is my co-host, husband, Dungeon Master Eguile.
How's it going, everyone?
Hello, everybody. Welcome. So today's episode is going to be a Heard It From Us segment, where we talk just about the advice, insights, and the findings we have from the world of TTRPGs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've been doing this for some years now, and we find like a lot is kind of taught through sharing experiences and knowledge, and a lot of it more of sharing all the mistakes you make so that others don't hopefully have those same mistakes. So we figured this is the best way we can share that knowledge, and hopefully you can dodge some of the pitfalls we had in our early stages of playing TTRPGs.
Yeah, we hope the advice helps. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about this concept that we kind of adopted that we call the Simpsons Did It. Do you want to explain a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm an avid South Park fan, and that's where a lot of that joke comes from. But it's that idea of, you know, how someone's already either seen something you've done narratively or character-wise, or another major, more popular media has done it. And so your first thought is always, oh, hey, this person did that, or this person did that. So we always just refer to it as the Simpsons did it.
Yeah.
And it was not as a way to insult anyone, but more of just this acknowledgement of, yeah, you really can't be super original anymore. I mean, you can, but it's so hard with how much media is out there now. And so we just use it as a way of saying, hey, it's okay. That's what we all deal with. And we all just keep rolling, and we just say Simpsons did it.
Yeah, and the core aspect of that sort of saying that we have is just to focus on the having fun aspect, and the originality comes with it, but it all also embrace some of the things that are used that are present in other places.
And really what, for us, we've dealt with this for quite some time. We're now on our third campaign. And so having now a third opportunity to create characters, we've now kind of let go a lot of that idea of trying to so adamantly hold some sort of originality, trying to make sure, but then not realizing it. And so what we want to first start looking at is kind of looking at some of the stuff that we've had, the struggles, the issues that you've experienced as a player and I've experienced as a dungeon master.
Yeah, absolutely. And the struggle of originality is sometimes completely accidental. You might not even realize that you're copying something. Like in the second campaign, we had a character created named Lullaby. She was a Kenku
warrior monk.
Yeah, but she was a very scraggly sort of looking bird person. She was not really like the fluffy type that you normally think of. All the
feathers were molting off.
Yeah,
and it was very gross.
And the way the player described the character, even though that player didn't know it at the time, sounded very similar to the Skeksis birds from the Dark Crystal.
Yeah, and I remember when he was describing this character to me too, and it was like, in my head I'm like, okay, yeah, from like Dark Crystal, it's like Jim Henson,
totally makes sense,
totally crazy, but it's cool because now it's a good guy.
Yeah,
so it's gonna be that
not
like,
evil.
So I'm like, oh, so this player knows that like as kids we watched the Skeksis, we're like, oh, they're the bad guys,
horrible,
and he's gonna play off of that role. Unbeknownst to me, he has no clue. He's never
seen it,
never heard of them, had no clue. So all of us at the table are just kind of assuming that's what he was basing it off of, but he had no clue. It was hilarious.
When we found out he didn't know, we were all baffled at how that parallel got created. But it's just because, so much has been put out into this world in terms of content, literature, whatever you can think of in forms of entertainment, that there really are, you've kind of told all of the basic major stories, but the point is to inject a sort of personal touch, in my opinion. And that's what gives it originality.
Oh, yeah. And so, for me, like as a dungeon master, there's a lot of problems it has when it comes to like storylines and plot hooks and plot beats. That, it really gets tough to not have your characters kind of already know what's going on sometimes. Just because it's the tried and true. I mean, now there's always like the joke, like the woman missing her child and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's also more of just like behaviors of NPCs that if you're not careful with, if your particular person is too friendly, they might just go, well, yeah, we've seen this show where the friendly barkeep is the one who did it. And so instantly, without even attempting to do anything, your players are already jumping to these cliche ideas that they're so used to. Yeah. Whereas you as a DM are like, no, this is totally original. Not like
just
that.
Being friendly.
You're very much trying your best to break people out of those connections and trying to create kind of unique content. And so it gets very difficult, both intentionally and unintentionally, to not run into the same problems over and over again.
Yeah, especially if you have players on board that are like the investigate everything type of players. And so that tends to, we tend to do that a bit at our table, and it can get a little muddled where we start just like thinking that something's going on when it's not.
I think it also comes to when it comes, one of the other issues that we face a lot as DMs is, with the plethora of content that there is in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, which is what we started on before we broke off. Yeah. Is that there is a lot of lore and information built into that world, because obviously it's this great universe that was created. But because of that too, if you are using the content books, you are kind of getting into that trap where there are known things that happen, right? So in essence, like when I was playing the Waterdeep, the Dragon Heist campaign
that was
book,
fun.
But it's kind of that thing where, as the book portrays, and you run into Laeral Silverhand. Yeah. But anybody who knows anything about the lore or story knows that this person is a cosmically good person, and that there's really not. So there's automatically kind of a breaking of the story, because the players are just like, and if you do try to break that kind of setting, now she's the bad guy, you might face more, because now you're breaking what everyone expects of that character.
Yeah, and it's a little tough.
Catch-22.
Especially she's so widely known as a good person, so it's tough to be a D&D player that's super into the lore and everything, or has played quite a lot, and not know that. And so it's sort of like accidental metagaming. You don't really try to, but you just naturally feel more at ease with a certain character because they're known good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, for an example, like on your side as a player, when you created the player Alira.
Oh yeah.
I know that you faced a lot of. I mean, obviously we were crit roll fans. It's what started us into the whole TTRPG space. But obviously, Alira kind of had some similarities to some characters, and you were kind of not necessarily accused a lot of playing this character, but it did kind of play into how some of the other players viewed Alira in the early part of the story.
Yeah, it took a while for them to realize that I wasn't necessarily replaying that character, because I had a certain proclivity. That first character, Alira, she really liked her money. So she wanted to keep it.
And so she had similar traits to what in Critical Role would be Vexalia. But at the same time, it's like you could even stretch and go back further into literary and other examples where, there's other characters that do the exact same thing.
Yeah, and honestly, really, the only thing we had in common was really like the money thing. Both of the characters were super into making sure they had a lot of money. They kept the party gold. They were the treasurer of the group. And it took a while for them to realize it wasn't just that. It was, I really have, a lot of books that I read. And so Alira specifically was an amalgamation of some books that I'd read that I really love the people of. And that's why she's a Vistani, because I really love that culture. And the books I read were really good about it. And so I just really liked it. So she was more nuanced than that. And that's the kind of advice I would give is, pull from things that you love, but don't copy them outright. Just let them add flavor.
Yeah, and obviously there is kind of that split between originality as a player and originality as a DM. Yeah, that kind of splits us both and having those similar experiences. And so we really just kind of want to show that we have had those struggles, but we've just come out of it with this sense of that. Yeah, that's just part of the process. Yeah, there's obviously a difference between just blatant copy paste and also just someone who's taking pieces to create this new unique story or player that can essentially birth its own life as it kind of expands across. And so, as always with Heard It For Us, we like to reach out to our community and kind of get a little bit of an idea of how they feel. And so we go across our Discord through X. and try to reach out and see what the other people out there and how they operate their games. And so what did we find out this week?
You know, funny enough, it was 100% votes for a combination of both homebrew and book content.
Yeah, which I kind of thought was probably going to be what the results are myself, given, I thought there would be a few people that might do
one or the
either
other,
be like strictly by the book or, be completely unique. Like there's a person who I know who happens to play with his college dorm mates, and I guess what I would call would be the true homebrew. They just get together, they whatever scenario, they put some stuff on a table. There's no real rules. They kind of make it up as they go. They don't plan
anything ahead of time.
And they very much just have fun rolling dice and playing a story.
Yeah, like they sit down, pick a setting right then and there, build their characters and go.
And build the rules on how they want to play each time. So
nothing's set.
But it really shows that most of us in the community, if not all of us, really like to take that opportunity to both take the original content, the content made by, Wizards of the Coast and other companies, and then also give it that unique little spin, that little extra spice to go on top to really make it a unique story. And I think that really kind of shows that we all are probably suffering from this same kind of issue of the Simpsons Did It, which is why we thought it was so important to talk about.
And also to talk about how it shouldn't be viewed as necessarily a negative thing. We always pull from the things that we love most or that affect us most in life. And so I think using that kind of helps. It gives D&D a sort of therapeutic aspect to it because you can work through some stuff through that.
Oh, yeah. And one thing to look at, too, is that there's also ways to really kind of change up the game, too. And like I said, for example, in our campaign 1, most of the campaign was made up of the various content books staged in a way that worked with this overall branching narrative. Rather than taking a book and go, okay, this is all we're doing. The story ends. It was more of they were ways to supplement and add a little extra work. And then perhaps instead of having the bad guy from that story, we used our own unique setting. Such as when we used the Curse of Strahd, it actually opened up the introduction to what ended up becoming our major antagonist for the BBEGs at the end of campaign 1. Was merely just some extra homebrew content to add more prisoners to the Amber Temple.
Yeah, you had added some extra people that
just to be fun. They were like jokes, and they were plays off of grim fairy tales.
Well, they weren't such a joke at the end.
Yeah, and so that really becomes that way of being both, using the original content and being unique in your own right, and through just a simple adding of maybe flavor, you might actually create this whole unique storyline that is now really your own story.
True. Like I said before, I don't find anything wrong with pulling sort of inspiration from the things that you love. What I would not recommend is copying things outright. There are certain things you can do. Let's say like in 5e, you can make a Naruto sort of person, through various mechanics.
I'm pretty sure through a lot of D&D Reddits, we've heard a lot about
right.
a
Like
lot of
you
Naruto
can create
characters.
a lot of characters. You can create a Goku. Like there's a bunch of things that you can copy outright. But I think the best of it is when you just take a flavor for it and then inject your own unique personality, because that's what makes a unique character. One of our friends told me a story about her first encounter at a D&D table, very first time trying to play, where the DM told her to play someone completely opposite from her personality. But it's like, how do you do that? How do you
Oh, yeah, that can be really difficult.
That's difficult. And it's also a little stressful as your first time. I get trying that when you're a seasoned person and you're trying to get out of your comfort zone and you know all the rules. But when you're first starting off, that is super intimidating to try and find something that is completely different from you.
Yeah, I mean, I know who you're talking about, obviously, and I remember when she had spoke to me about it, and I was going kind of confused myself about that kind of advice. And I remember just being like, honestly, the first person you should copy off is yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of, what we've been saying this whole episode is the originality might not come from the ideas that you glean for your character. They come from the personality you put into it. That's the point. So copy yourself, create a character that shares your personality traits. Maybe not everything, maybe pick and choose some of the things you like. I've played characters that are more angry or characters that are more greedy. In this more campaign, I'm playing someone who's a little colder, a little more clinical. And so you pick certain things that maybe appeal to you in the moment and you go with that. You inject your own personality into it. And that's what gives it the unique flavor.
Right. And that's what I really like about Heard It From Us, and that being able to kind of reach out and hear a little bit about how the other tables play out there and what the community really says about certain topics. And so if you disagree with our decisions or our topics or the poll itself, or you want to get into any more, please check us out on our Extraeus Project Discord. We also post them on X as well. So please, submit your, poll. Let us know if there's a topic maybe that you're wanting to see what everyone's opinions are. But this is kind of the way that we connect with one another and kind of get that opportunity to share advice and actually see that we're all really kind of going through the same thing. And so rather than just being stressed out, a DM kind of in their office trying to figure it out, know that we're all like that and that it's okay. And as we always say, the Simpsons did it. So it doesn't really matter. Everybody copies off of everyone.
Yeah, I would say try not to focus on it being a sort of copy thing. Just try to focus on making it its own unique perspective for you.
Yeah, and I think what it really just comes down to is just embrace creativity for creativity's sake.
Yeah, it's just kind of fun to have fun.
Right. And so and like a big thing is to me, it's like the archetype, like you were even saying, like if you want to make a Goku character, right? And there are tons of YouTube and Instagram things that'll show you exactly. But really, unless you're actually going, I'm a Saiyan from planet, you're not actually playing Goku.
Yeah.
So as soon as the story goes and you're riding a horse,
right,
and you're dodging goblins, and you throw in a little Kamehameha or whatever,
and magic is happening.
But the moment that story started, you are no longer anything but your character.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think that a lot of people need to remember. And I think that's what starts to get disheartening, is that you make these characters, and before you get even a chance to let them grow out and walk on their little legs, you have other people that are saying, well, you copied this person, so obviously you're not original. And I think that really starts to kind of like tear down certain players and DMs.
Yeah, and it kind of loses confidence a little bit, for a person, for DMs as well as players. Like you said, if a DM is accused of copying something, that can be a little disheartening. You're like, well, I was trying really hard and maybe it did copy this. I wasn't aware of that. I'm really sorry. Like, it's just really disheartening.
Yeah.
And same thing for players too, when you're just trying to have fun at a table and somebody nitpicks at you, oh, you copied this. It's just like, well, who really cares at the end of the day? You're just trying to have fun.
And I think by nature, like D&D is very much that in itself, a sharing community, right? Like there are just hundreds of pages dedicated to artists sharing their ideas for weapons, items, plot lines, so that we can share those ideas. Now, obviously, give mention where mention is due.
Of course.
When you have certain projects, but at the same time, we want to share these ideas. We want to see them grow, because when they're just ideas, that's all they are, right?
Yeah.
When we have this character, I have 50 characters, but if they've never seen a table, they've never been able to play, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So really what you want to look at, and what I try to do as a DM, is use some of that to your advantage. I love nothing more than using tropes and these kind of common ideas that players know to lure them into traps.
Yeah.
Make it to where the character they thought was the bad guy is actually the good guy, and they just really screwed up.
It was just misinterpreted.
And I think that does a lot of help in playing off and subverting those expectations, because a lot of times we do have those, and if you know as a DM that they exist and you acknowledge, rather than trying to, oh no, everything's unique, you can play off a lot of those kind of stories and have a lot more fun doing it by leaning into the fact that you're being a little bit of a copycat.
Yeah, a little bit of a trope, But I also, as a little bit of advice, I'd say, especially for new players who, you know, are coming in brand new and are maybe a little intimidated as to creating this intricate backstory or player character for themselves. Is to give up a little bit of that control, give up the reins a little bit. In this current campaign, I'm playing someone who has like no recollection, no memories. And I've got to say, it's been both freeing and really, really fun to find things out on the fly that I had no clue were coming at me. It's made the campaign so much more of a spontaneous thing for me that it really immerses me in the gameplay.
Right, and that's kind of plays into as the DM side when looking at a character like this, right? Rather than just having the, oh, you're this stereotypical, oh, I don't know my background, I don't know who I am.
I have no idea.
I am writing your background behind you, which means
I do have one.
You're getting this
don't know it.
information. So normally as a character would just be like, oh, they're the amnesia character. Maybe every now and then they're blurt out something, but it's more of you're getting these like hits of memory that change your character's kind of mindset on certain things.
Yeah, and they've been intense.
Right. And so that's again where it's like you take what is a standard trope and you just put little spins on it. Yeah. And that's really all you need to do, because that's really the nature of our community. And that's what I really love about being in the TTRPG community, or really in the broader sense, the nerd community, right? In that we very much understand that we all produce our own goods, right? The Couple of Nerds podcast productions, as well as Link's art. We all acknowledge that those are all the pieces that we form. But in reality, we all still want that content to go out and be shared by our community. And because we all kind of have that philosophy, we all are kind of creating this zeitgeist kind of creation that is the TTRPG space, which is what we're talking about, what we're being a part of. Yeah. And by nature, by doing that, we're never really saying, oh, don't copy this, don't copy that. We're saying more of, here, take this, tell us what you make with it. Yeah. That's what we want to hear about.
Exactly. The way I like to sort of frame it is, you know, we have a million different love songs out there. Why don't we just have one that tells us exactly what love means? Because everyone has a different definition of what love means to them or their experiences with that. That's why you could have one favorite love song, somebody else could have another one that really speaks to them, because they're all unique, even though they talk about the exact same thing.
Right, and that just shows how it can be so true within our own community. Yeah. And so really it comes down to, like, if you're a player, you're a DM, and you just want to go out and have fun, go have fun. Yeah. And that everyone at your table, and yourself including, should understand our moniker, The Simpsons Did It. Yeah. Because it really means relax. It's not a big deal in that sense, because we're all truly replaying stories and creating new stories all at the same time.
Yeah, if everyone's done it, then there really shouldn't be any sort of like bad feeling. We should just embrace it, move forward, and add our own unique spin. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, and I think it really shows too with the way that I think the art scene has exploded within the TTRPG community, with being able to create character art.
Yeah, and Link's talked about the unique OC aspect of... Right.
And I think that really shows to me the specifics, because no matter what, if you told me, oh, they have this Naruto character, they're such and such and such, I bet you when you get that character art, that character looks nothing like Naruto. Right. But because you have this kind of intrinsic thought pattern of when you see certain things together and you've watched 400 some episodes of an anime, you just can't help but connect it. But then when these great artists go out and create that original concept, it breaks from that. And now you have a wholly original character. Maybe has a little bit of a framework of a Naruto, but who doesn't want to be Naruto or Superman or Goku? The whole point of playing TTRPGs is to be somebody cool.
And I think the difference is, like, sure, if you go up to an artist and say, please draw me Naruto, they're going to draw you Naruto. Right. But if you give them the sort of description that you give your character when building a D&D character, you know, how high, how wide, all the sorts of measurements, what's the hair color, what's the eye color. Yeah, exactly. Right. When you give those instead of like, I want this particular person drawn, you can get a completely different character than what you were expecting to get.
Oh yeah, and I mean, for example, I think with working with the character Bricky, you know, he has kind of an uphill battle given the kind of contextuality of the way his character is designed and being of copies of historical events and figures, which is another issue of creativity you have to deal with. But again, if it's taken in the concept of that, well, that doesn't exist in our world. Extraeus doesn't have those things.
Yeah.
So no matter what, it will always be wholly original. Everything this character does will only be the first time that it's
new
ever
and
done.
Extraeus.
And that's the way to look at it. Your game starts the creative process. Everything you do to start and make it, sure, take a little of this, take a little of that. Make sure to tip your waiter for what you get the little extra for.
Yeah.
But once that story starts, oh man, it's going to get a life of its own and run away from you.
Yeah, I think that's why I like the unique aspect of Extraeus is the fact that it nods to things in other realms and other stories because it is a sort of creation of those stories. You know, it's a consequence, so to speak.
Right. And so like, now, as we've been saying, you know, we really wanted to focus on what we give at our table. And that's this little phrase that I know doesn't mean much and I think is an episode title of South Park. But that alone just kind of clears the air. And as we've shown and as we've heard, the community out there is a lot like us. They like that mixture of both. But when you're doing that, there's always that worry about that creative kind of bind that you can run into.
Yeah, it can get tough.
But as we've been shown, you know, and as we've experienced ourselves, you just want to run with it. Let the story build the character, not the roots of it specifically, right? Let it go on and start. Let it leave daycare. Let it go off to school. And you'll see how your creation will create itself. But we always want, as always, thank you all. You know, obviously having us come here and talk to you all. And we thank you for your continued listening.
It's super fun to do, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you really liked what you heard, or if you just have some comments to make, please let us know. Like, review, or subscribe to the podcast. We'd really appreciate it. It just helps contribute to our growth and keeps us going to keep creating this vibrant community we like.
Also keep an eye out on the @Couple of Nerds podcast on YouTube. We've been putting up a lot of the art and graphics of our various adventures, and you can get a little bit more behind the scenes with our garden crafts that have recently come out.
Yep, you can also check out all the artwork from our different comic caves.
And also our Project Extraeus Discord, we will be posting all of our different voting topics there first. So if you want to select what our topic is, please join that there first. That is the exclusive place for all the You Heard It From Us polls.
Yep. If you don't have the link to our Discord, you can always message us below and we'll include a link for you there. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good one.